The space station Xanthera floated above a glowing blue star, like a crown made of metal and light. Ships from 100 different worlds drifted into its docks, their hulls marked with strange symbols and glowing patterns. Inside the station, the air shimmered with the scent of burning spices, alien metals, and ozone from humming gravlifts. Among all the creatures of scale, shell, fur, and flame, one man walked alone, tall, calm, and utterly out of place. Dr. Strange moved through the bustling corridors in his long red cloak, which curled slightly behind him as if it had a mind of its own. The eye of Agamotto gleamed on his chest, and the silver streaks in his hair caught the artificial light above. The sorcerer walked with purpose, eyes scanning signs written in languages only he could read. He wasn't here for sightseeing. Earth had finally earned a chance to speak before the Panstellar Accord, the greatest diplomatic council in the known galaxy. Strange had been chosen, not just as Earth's ambassador, but as its final hope. He stepped into a bright, glass-domed atrium where crowds gathered under holographic trees and glowing banners. Strange spotted a young alien girl sitting alone at the edge of a fountain, her skin a soft lavender with glowing teal freckles. Her eyes were large and curious, her ears shaped like leaves. She was clutching a translation device that looked older than she was. Strange offered a polite smile and raised a hand in peace. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Could you help me find the Accord Assembly entrance?" The girl looked up and froze. Her pupils widened in horror, her mouth opened, but no words came, only a breathless, shaky gasp. Then she screamed, "A human! A human!" She leaped to her feet and bolted across the atrium, knocking over a merchant's display of steaming starfruit. The crowd turned toward the sound, and time seemed to freeze. Every eye locked onto him. Whispers exploded into shouts. Traders ducked behind stalls. Children cried. Even a hulking three-eyed warrior took a nervous step back. Strange blinked. That went well, he muttered under his breath. An alarm began to blare, sharp, rising tones that echoed off the domed ceiling. Robotic guards dropped from hatches in the walls, their arms transforming into stun rifles as they aimed at the sorcerer. "By Accord law," one announced, "human presence is classified as a Level 7 containment threat. Surrender immediately." Strange raised both hands, his fingers glowing with the golden light of a spell. Not to attack, but to defend. He took a slow breath. "I'm not here to start a war." The guards didn't care. They opened fire. Spinning his hands, Strange summoned a glowing shield that deflected the bolts in bursts of golden sparks. People screamed. Stalls exploded. The entire atrium descended into chaos. Strange twisted his fingers again, and a portal opened beneath him in a flash of swirling orange light. He dropped through it just as a missile struck the floor where he had stood. He landed hard in a dark, dripping tunnel. Sewage. Strange sighed. From interstellar ambassador to galactic fugitive, in under 2 minutes. Somewhere above, sirens wailed. Lights pulsed red. And across the galaxy, the name human was now a curse spoken louder than ever. The tunnel smelled of rust, wet stone, and something worse. Dr. Strange walked carefully through ankle-deep sludge, his cloak floating behind him, barely brushing the foul water. The magical glow from his fingertips lit the narrow path ahead in warm gold. Xanthera Station was massive, so big that entire forgotten sections stretched for miles beneath its polished surface. Strange had landed in one of those places. Pipes rattled above him. Something skittered in the shadows. He took another step, then froze. A sharp sound echoed behind him, a metallic hiss and the click of a weapon charging. "Don't move," a voice growled. He turned slowly. A tall insectoid stood in the gloom, armored in chitin that shimmered green and bronze. Its many eyes glinted with suspicion. Behind it stood a smaller figure, hooded, thin, and clearly not a soldier. She held a scanning device and looked up from it with surprise. "Wait," the hooded figure said, stepping closer. "Let me see his face." The insectoid guard hesitated, then lowered the weapon slightly. The woman pulled down her hood. She had a face like flowing glass, semi-transparent with veins of soft light running through it. Her eyes were dark and sharp. Her voice was calm but curious. "You're really human." Strange gave a tired smile. "Depends who you ask." The woman didn't smile back. "Do you have any idea what you've done by coming here?" "I came to talk," Strange said. "They shot first." The insectoid hissed, readying its weapon again, but the woman raised a hand. "Stand down, Vurix. If he was dangerous, we'd both be dead already." She turned to Strange. "Come with me, quickly, before the purge teams sweep this section." Strange hesitated, then nodded. They moved fast, weaving through service corridors and broken maintenance shafts. Strange could feel the tension in the air. Something deeper than fear, something like dread. Finally, they entered a chamber filled with old, flickering screens. Data poured down from the ceiling in glowing strands, a long-dead archive. The woman gestured to a bench. "Sit. You're not safe anywhere on this station, but here's better than most." Strange sat. "You know who I am. Dr. Strange. Human. Earthborn. Mystic. That alone makes you a myth, a threat, and a symbol of everything the galaxy fears." Strange looked around. "Why? What did we do?" She stared at him. "You really don't know, do you?" "No," Strange said. "I've been across dimensions, through wars and time fractures, but no one ever mentioned this. Hatred." She touched a glowing panel. A hologram appeared, an image of a burning planet, scorched down to its core. "Billions of lives lost. This is the Oblivion Wound," she said. "A dead zone in Sector 9. They say humans caused it. That your species used forbidden weapons, wiped out entire systems, and then vanished. That you were too dangerous to let live." Strange frowned. "That's not history. That's a nightmare someone painted in blood." She nodded. "Exactly. But the galaxy believes it. The story of the human apocalypse is passed down like scripture. It keeps species united under fear." He looked at her closely. "And you?" She met his gaze. "My name is Yiv Era. I study buried truths. And I don't believe in monsters until I meet them myself." A distant boom echoed above. The station was hunting again. Strange stood. "Then help me. Let's find the truth, before the lie kills us both." She gave a small, bitter smile. "Welcome to the galaxy, Dr. Strange. Let's hope we live long enough to rewrite it." News spread through the galaxy like wildfire. First confirmed sighting of a human in over 400 cycles. The screen heard across the stars. Young alien girl survives contact with mythical destroyer. Every holoscreen, news sphere, and psychic link lit up with the same shaky footage. A tall man in red, calm as a statue, and the shrieking voice of a terrified girl. A human. A human. The scene looped endlessly, turning a quiet moment into galactic panic. In her small room aboard a guarded wing of Zenthara, Vale watched herself on repeat. Her hands trembled. Her heart still hadn't slowed down. She had always been afraid of monsters. The kind from old stories. The kind who came from the dark planet called Earth. They were the reason her people slept with light crystals. The reason her school books warned of fleshwalkers, with fire for hearts and poison for breath. But the human she saw didn't match the legends. He didn't roar. He didn't hurt her. He even seemed polite. Still, when she saw his eyes, so human, so real, every nightmare she had ever swallowed came screaming out. Now she was famous. Famous for surviving him. Outside her room, guards stood watch. Inside, she sat alone with her thoughts and an endless stream of messages. Some called her brave. Others called her lucky. And a few, those from worlds that remembered older truths, called her a fool. Suddenly, her wall screen blinked. A new file arrived. No signature, just a symbol, a gold circle with sparks of orange drifting through it. She tapped it. A holo message played. Dr. Strange appeared, standing in a tunnel dimly lit by glowing runes. His voice was calm, his hand steady. "I'm sorry I frightened you, Vale. That was never my intent." Her eyes widened. "I don't blame you," the message continued. "If I had been raised on stories like yours, I might have screamed too." He paused, gaze softening. "But someone wants the galaxy to fear us, to keep us silent. I've seen the records, the lies." The image flickered. Behind him, shadows moved. Something was hunting him. "I don't know who you really are," he said, "but I think you're more than you believe. You saw the truth and survived. That means something. If you want answers, meet me." A set of coordinates appeared on screen, deep in Xanthara's lowest decks. Then the message ended. Vale stared in silence. She had no reason to trust him, but something in his voice, something tired and true, cut through the fear. She hadn't seen a monster that day. She'd seen a man being hunted for the name he carried. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to know why. Elsewhere, far below the surface, Dr. Strange stood by a rusted doorway, cloaked in shadow. Magic shimmered faintly around him. He had taken a gamble, sending the message. If she came, there was still hope. If not, well, there were worse things than being hunted by an entire galaxy. His cloak stirred as he waited, quiet and alone in the dark. The shadows in the tunnel were deep and endless. Every step Dr. Strange took echoed off the cold metal walls, the sound swallowed by the thick air of this forgotten sector. A thick scent of rust and machinery mixed with the faint hum of distant power sources. The place felt alive, though it was abandoned for years. No light, no voice, just the quiet buzz of old technology working in secret. Vale arrived exactly on time. She wasn't alone. There was someone else. An old man, hunched with age, but with eyes sharp enough to see through the fog of time. His skin was the color of stone, his hands covered in tattoos that told stories of battles fought long ago. He eyed Strange with the intensity of a man who'd lived through too many betrayals. "Who's this?" Strange asked, stepping aside to allow them both into the small room where he'd been waiting. "I'm Jorel," the old man said, his voice gravelly and low. "I was once part of the Zorillian Empire's Council of Truth." He gave a wry smile. "Though those truths have been buried a long time." Vale didn't look at him. Her eyes were locked on Strange. She had come here seeking answers, but now that she was here, her heart pounded. Everything about the station felt wrong. The way people looked at her when they thought she wasn't looking. The whispers that followed her footsteps. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice quieter than she meant. "This is where they hid the truth," Jorel replied, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The records they erased, the lies they've built to keep you in the dark. Everything about the Oblivion Wound, about your people's destruction, was a lie." Strange moved to the center of the room, his fingers tracing the air as if pulling threads from the atmosphere. Ancient symbols and shapes floated in front of him, glowing softly, like pieces of a puzzle coming together. "The truth is out there," he said, his voice low but certain. "But it's buried beneath layers of lies. Deep in the records, the Panstellar Accord wiped clean." Jorel nodded. "The Velari Dominion created the wound. They were the ones who used the forbidden technology, not humans." Vale looked between them, confused. Why would they lie? Why would they blame Earth for something they didn't do? "They needed a scapegoat," Strange said. "The Velari Dominion wanted to keep their secrets. They framed Earth as the villain, then destroyed any evidence that could clear the human name. But someone powerful, wanted humanity to remain a ghost story, to remain a myth." "But why?" Vale asked. Her voice trembled now, the weight of what she was hearing sinking in. "If we didn't do this, then who did?" Strange didn't answer immediately. He focused on the air in front of him, weaving together the magic that could peel back the layers of history. He spoke softly, almost to himself. Someone who wanted control. Someone who wanted to keep the galaxy united through fear. The old man stepped forward, his eyes hardening. And now the Accord, the so-called peaceful council, has built their empire on that fear. They want Earth forgotten, erased. Strange's hands glowed brighter, and the holographic records in the room shifted, revealing flashes of ancient battles, hidden councils, and the rise of the secret order. Images of the Velari Dominion's final moments played out. Burned stars, forgotten warships, and a galaxy caught in the wake of a terrible truth. "This is it," Strange murmured. "The moment of the lie." Vale's heart raced as the images filled the room. The pieces fell into place. We're not the monsters. They made us into them. A flicker of determination crossed her face. She turned to Strange. "Then we have to stop them." Dr. Strange gave her a small, approving nod. "We will." And in that moment, the weight of a galaxy's history hung between them. One broken treaty, one buried truth, and one girl who was about to change everything. The walls of Xanthera Station trembled. It wasn't just the sound of its engines, or the shifting of its vast, cavernous rooms. No, this was something else, something darker. Strange could feel the pressure building around them, the air thick with the weight of an unseen force gathering its strength. He stood at the center of a darkened control room, watching the flickering images of Xanthera's security systems. They were scanning for something. Someone. Him. "The Accord knows I'm here," Strange said, eyes narrowing as he stared at the screens. "And that means the hunt is already in motion." Vale, who had been silent until now, stepped closer. "What do you mean, hunt?" "It's not just a matter of arresting me," Strange explained, his voice calm but carrying an edge of urgency. "They'll try to erase all evidence. They'll eliminate anyone who knows the truth, including you." Vale's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the screens. The panicked rush of ships moving through the station, the flashes of guards searching. Everything was starting to make sense. "You said it yourself," Strange continued. "They want the galaxy united through fear. That means destroying anything that threatens their story, and that includes you." Vale took a breath. The weight of his words was heavy, but she was no stranger to pressure. The fear in her chest didn't have the chance to settle. Instead, she squared her shoulders. "Then we fight back," she said, her voice stronger now. Strange turned to her, a small, approving smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Not yet. First, we need to know exactly what we're up against." He raised a hand, and the air around them seemed to shimmer as if reality itself were bending. Strange's eyes glowed with the faintest golden light, and the world around them began to shift. The screens flickered, showing glimpses of the unseen forces lurking in the station's deep shadows. "Look," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The Accord is not just a council. They're a network, a conspiracy that reaches into every corner of the galaxy." The Velari Dominion wasn't just using humans as a scapegoat. They're part of something far bigger. The lights flickered again, and suddenly, the room was filled with holographic projections, swirling patterns of energy, maps of ancient battles, and images of a mysterious order wearing golden masks, their faces hidden, their movements swift and calculated. "This order," Strange continued, "is more than a secret. It's a force that controls the narrative, controls the history. They've been rewriting it for generations." Vale stared at the images, a knot forming in her stomach. She had no idea what the truth was anymore. But one thing was certain: the galaxy was not what she had been taught to believe. And she wasn't just a bystander in someone else's story. "We need to stop them," she said again, the words more desperate now. "How do we fight back if they can control everything?" Strange's gaze softened. He stepped closer, the light of the Eye of Agamotto reflecting in his eyes. "We take back control of the narrative. We show the galaxy the truth." A loud crash echoed from down the hall. The sound of boots, The unmistakable clanging of armored soldiers. "They're here," Strange muttered. "Time's up." In the next instant, he raised his hands, and portals of swirling orange light opened around them. Each portal pulsed with the energy of a different dimension, each one offering a way out, a way to escape the tightening noose of the Accord. Vale's pulse quickened. She could feel the soldiers getting closer. "Go," Strange said urgently. "Get to the lower decks. Find the records. It's the only way we can expose the truth." Vale hesitated for just a moment, her eyes meeting Strange. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. Her future. She nodded, determination flooding through her. "I'm ready." And with that, she stepped into the nearest portal, disappearing into the swirling light just as the first blast of energy struck the control room's door. The lights of Xanthera Station flickered, casting long, harsh shadows across the steel walls of the corridor. Dr. Strange's cloak rippled in the air behind him, the only sign of movement in the quiet. His eyes scanned the dimly lit passageway, his senses heightened as the station hummed beneath his feet. "They know I'm here," he muttered to himself, his fingers twitching with the faintest flicker of magic. His mind was racing, calculating the next steps, the safest route to avoid the search parties closing in. Xanthera wasn't just a sprawling station. It was a labyrinth of secrets, each corridor more dangerous than the last. Vale walked beside him, her eyes darting from one shadow to the next. She hadn't spoken since their conversation in the control room, but Strange could feel the questions swirling around her. She was scared, yes, but more than that, she was angry at the lies, at the people who had made her believe in a false history. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice a little shaky but determined. "We need to get to the lower decks," Dr. Strange replied, his tone steady. "That's where the old records are hidden, where the truth is buried." The sound of boots echoed in the distance, and Strange's posture stiffened. The Accord was already moving. Their operatives, agents trained in stealth and precision, would be closing in soon. It was only a matter of time before they realized what was happening. Strange held up a hand, stopping Vale in her tracks. He concentrated, his fingers weaving through the air like a conductor, summoning the magic that had become as familiar to him as breathing. A portal rippled open in front of them, the air shimmering with golden light. "Through here," he urged, pulling her along. Vale hesitated only for a heartbeat before stepping into the swirling vortex. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, they were hurtling through dimensions, the world blurring around them. For a brief, disorienting moment, Vale felt a sharp sense of vertigo, as if time and space were folding in on themselves. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the world snapped back into focus. They landed in a darkened, abandoned section of the station, far below the main decks. Strange's senses flared. This part of Xanthera had been untouched for years, left to decay and fall into ruin. It was quiet, too quiet, as if the very air held its breath, waiting. "Keep close," Strange whispered, glancing over his shoulder. The portal flickered and disappeared behind them, leaving only the eerie silence in its wake. "We can't afford to be seen." Vale nodded, her eyes wide with the unfamiliar surroundings. The walls here were covered in old symbols, faded and worn. Strange could tell this was once a place of knowledge, a library, maybe even a vault of forgotten truths. But now, it was nothing more than a crypt, its secrets buried beneath layers of dust and silence. They moved quickly through the hallways, Strange's footsteps barely making a sound on the cold metal floors. Each corner they turned, every door they passed, seemed to be holding its breath. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, as if the very station itself was watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. Vale's voice broke the silence, quiet but urgent. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? About the Accord. About the truth." Strange glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I didn't know who I could trust, Vale. The truth is dangerous. The moment the Accord realizes what we're doing, they'll stop at nothing to silence us. Ahead, a faint glow began to pulse through the cracks in a door at the far end of the hall. Strange's eyes narrowed. This is it. Stay close. They approached cautiously, every step deliberate. The door opened with a faint hiss, revealing a large chamber filled with rows of data storage units. The air inside was stale, the machinery ancient, but the glow of data streams flickered in the distance. The records were here, hidden, guarded, and waiting to be uncovered. Strange reached for a panel on the nearest console, his fingers brushing over it with practiced ease. As the screen flickered to life, an image appeared. An ancient map of the galaxy, marked with places of power, ancient wars, and a trail of destruction leading back to the human homeworld. "This is it," he murmured. "The truth." But before he could continue, a shrill alarm rang out, echoing through the chamber. They were here. The shrill alarm tore through the chamber like a blade, its high-pitched wail echoing off the walls. Dr. Strange didn't flinch, but Vale's eyes snapped toward the door. The unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, grew louder, and the door began to slide shut. Strange's hand flicked out, his fingers tracing the air with swift precision. A barrier of shimmering energy flared up between them and the approaching threat. The magic wrapped around them, protecting them for now, but only for a moment. "We don't have much time," he muttered, his eyes flicking to the glowing data screen still pulsing with hidden truths. "The Accord's enforcers are already on their way. We need to pull everything we can from this before they lock it down." Vale's heart pounded as she stared at the screen. The galaxy map spread out before them, its ancient lines and symbols like a riddle written in stardust. It was more than just a map. It was a record of the Oblivion Wound, the source of all the lies she had been fed. And within the complex web of star systems, one name stood out, glowing with an eerie red hue. Zentha. "That's where the wound began," she whispered, her voice tight. "It started here, in Zenthara." Strange nodded without looking away from the screen. "Exactly. The truth has always been buried here. The Accord doesn't want anyone to know what happened. But this is the key." But even as they spoke, the chamber door rattled. The sound of soldiers was closing in faster now, their boots pounding the metal floor. "We can't stay here," Strange said, his voice sharp. He turned to Vale. "Get ready. The moment we leave this room, we'll be hunted." Vale clenched her fists, her mind racing. The revelation was too big to comprehend fully, but one thing was clear. Everything she had been taught, everything she thought she knew about her people's history, was a lie. The Oblivion Wound was not the work of humans. It was the creation of those who wanted to control the galaxy's future. Strange's eyes shifted to the door, where a flicker of movement caught his attention. He didn't hesitate. With a sharp motion, he summoned a portal, the air around them twisting as reality bent. But just as the light began to swirl, a voice called out from the doorway. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" Vale froze, her breath caught in her throat. A figure stepped into the chamber, his silhouette sharp and angular. Jor-El, the old man they had trusted, the one who had spoken of the truth. Except now, his face was shadowed, and the look in his eyes was one of cold, calculated betrayal. "You were never supposed to find this, Vale," Jor-El said, his voice low and dangerous. "You were never meant to learn the truth." Dr. Strange's gaze snapped toward him, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, but it was quickly replaced by wariness. You knew." Jor-El's smile was thin, his eyes glinting with malice. "I knew enough to stay alive. You should have left when you had the chance. But now," he raised a hand, and the air around them thickened, heavy with dark energy. "Now, you're a threat to everything we've built." The space between them crackled with tension. Strange stepped in front of Vale, his hands glowing with magic. "You're working for the Accord," he said, the accusation clear. Jor-El chuckled darkly. "I was once. Now, I work for something bigger. The Order of the Shadow doesn't want the truth to be known. Not now. Not ever. Vale's stomach twisted in disbelief. The old man, the one she had trusted, had been playing them all along. Before she could react, Jor-El raised his hand, and the room seemed to pulse with dark energy. Strange countered with a wave of his own magic, but the force of the attack sent them both tumbling back. The portal flickered out, the world around them swirling with dangerous energy. "Run!" Strange shouted to Vale, his voice sharp. But it was too late. The door behind them exploded open, and the sound of footsteps, many footsteps, filled the room. The enforcers of the Accord had arrived. Jor-El's eyes gleamed with victory. "It's over. You'll never escape." The room was still. The oppressive weight of the battle hung in the air, but the immediate danger had passed. Jor-El lay motionless on the ground, his dark energy dissipating into the air like smoke. The enforcers who had once filled the chamber were either unconscious or scattered, defeated by the onslaught of magic. Vale stood over the console, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the data that had been revealed to her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but there was no time to savor the victory. The truth was out in the open now, and there was no going back. "Dr. Strange," she called, her voice hoarse but urgent. "We have to go. The station is about to collapse." Strange was already at her side, his eyes scanning the room, his mind working quickly. The air was thick with residual magic, and the walls seemed to be groaning in protest, as if the very structure of the station was resisting the revelation. He glanced at the data that Vale had uncovered. The truth of the Oblivion Wound was no longer hidden in shadow. The map had shown something far more horrifying than they had anticipated. The Order of the Shadow, the very people they had thought were enemies of the Accord, were its creators. They had engineered the wound, manipulated history, and controlled the galaxy's power for centuries. But now, Vale had the key to ending it. The ancient knowledge contained in the data was the first step. The Accord and its puppet masters would fall if they could expose the truth to the galaxy. And with it, the fragile peace they had fought so hard to maintain would shatter. Strange's mind raced. "We don't have much time. We need to get off this station." Vale nodded, her face pale but determined. She could feel the pressure of the moment pressing in on her. The truth was both a weapon and a curse, powerful enough to ignite a revolution, but dangerous enough to bring destruction in its wake. As the last remnants of the battle faded, the station groaned again. The walls shook more violently this time, as if the entire structure was on the brink of collapse. Strange raised his hands, summoning a portal in the air before them. The swirling vortex shimmered with golden light, its edges crackling with magic. "After you," he said, his tone steady but urgent. Vale hesitated for only a moment, her eyes flicking back to the data on the console. She could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on her. She had the truth now. The whole galaxy would know the lies they had been fed for generations. She didn't need to hesitate any longer. She stepped into the portal without looking back, and Dr. Strange followed close behind. The familiar rush of displaced time and space surrounded them, but this time it didn't feel disorienting. It felt like freedom. The station behind them began to crumble, the walls breaking apart, and the very foundation of Zenthora was torn asunder. The Order of the Shadow might have controlled the station, but they couldn't control the future. As they emerged on the other side, they found themselves in the heart of the galaxy, the bustling, chaotic expanse of space, where ships passed by like shooting stars. Strange took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We'll need allies," he said quietly. "The truth is a powerful weapon, but it's also a dangerous one. We can't expose it alone." Vale's gaze hardened, her eyes locked onto the vastness of space. "We won't be alone," she said, her voice steady. "I won't let them hide it anymore. I'll make sure they hear us." And with that, the two of them, Dr. Strange and the last of the Zenthora, stepped into the unknown, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle was far from over, But the first victory had been won. The truth had been unleashed. And the galaxy would never be the same.